Hello, everyone, and welcome to Level the Field Leadership. My name is Dr. Rachel Gallardo, and I'm, as always, very thankful, very excited that you've decided to join us today. If this is your first time, then welcome. So no obligation to anything at all. I'm just happy that you're here. But if you are returning, you're definitely in for a treat. I've had the pleasure to get to know and be introduced to Amy Chambers, and we're going to talk about habits today. But before we dive into all of that, you guys know the whole purpose of this episode, this podcast in general, this community is to help you level the field of challenges you encounter in the work environment by having the tools necessary for when and if those issues should happen to come up. I do believe that workplace burnout is very real, and anything we can do to reduce burnout and fatigue in our leadership roles will ultimately have a positive impact on our team. If you're watching this on YouTube, it might look a little bit different than what you've seen in previous episodes. The dryer broke. I'm in a t-shirt. I mean, life goes on, right? We have to move forward. But we do the best we can with what we have, and we just show up 100%, even if that 100% looks a little bit different from time to time. So enough about that. Let me go ahead and dive in. So Amy Chambers is an executive coach, life coach, leadership consultant, and motivational speaker with over 21 years of experience in the financial services industry and 15 years of leadership experience as a whole. She's the author of two best-selling books. The first is 7 Virtues of Exceptional Leaders. And the second one, which is the one we're going to primarily focus on today, is 6 Habits of Powerful People. And she's currently working on her 3rd book. So, but before all of that, before starting coaching and writing and consulting, she was the chief operating officer of SkyOne Federal Credit Union, which is now a billion-dollar institution. And by B, that's like B like boy, as in billions. By the time she was 28, she was managing 260 people for a large commercial bank and held numerous district manager and regional director roles before becoming COO. In all of that, she's also become an avid runner. So since running over the last decade, she's ran 230 half marathons, 12 full marathons, and hundreds of other races, totaling more than 13,000 miles. My goodness, I don't know how you have time to do all of that. That's amazing, but I'm so happy to have you talk to us. As a runner, I'm a little bit biased, so I'm very excited about the running part, but I'm also excited about the leadership part. So welcome, Amy. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Rachel. Can't wait.
And as the returning listeners know, I do kind of like to base everything around scripture. So just some things that kind of keep me motivated and inspired. And I came across Galatians 6:9, and it says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." And that's all kind of the basis of having a habit. It's kind of doing that same thing over and over and over again, knowing that eventually it's going to pay off. All of that's work is going to pay off. So, Amy, what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just be brutally honest with you and your listeners. At the time I started thinking about writing the book, a lot of people would have considered me successful from an outward standpoint. I was overseeing 15 branches at a bank. I did have about 250, 260 employees. I had gotten an MBA. I had gone to a strong undergrad school. It seemed like, oh, she's got it all together. She's on the fast track in life. But privately, I just felt like I was a mess. I had tumultuous friendships. Several of them would sort of end in disputes or arguments and then end. I felt very insecure about my body. I'd go to the beach in a swimsuit and be constantly comparing myself to other women that were there that seemed to be prettier or more attractive. And sometimes I'd feel anger or frustration over things going on with family. And I wasn't able to manage or control those emotions easily. And so I look back at myself now and say, gosh, you had a lot of issues. You were consumed by fear. You didn't want to try new things. You had kind of what I would call a fixed mindset by this psychologist and researcher, Carol Dweck. That's how she would term that. And I began to find and develop and practice and use these habits that now became the book. And as I did that, as I practiced those 6 habits in the book, I'd gotten a mentor, I'd gotten a therapist to help me with some of these things that became the book. My entire life changed. I did move into a COO role. I found the romantic relationship that I'm in now that's been 9 years strong. I bought my dream home. home. I became a runner. You mentioned the running before. I couldn't run a mile, and I started getting over fear and realizing I could do hard things. Became a marathon runner, and got to a point where I just began to love myself and cherish myself and trust myself. And it wasn't into comparisons anymore about like, how do you look versus somebody else? It was like, I'm proud of my own accomplishments. These habits changed my life. And at some point, people began asking me about them, like, wow, there's been a big shift in you. You should write a book. And so I decided to do it and turn the habits into a book. I want them to help other people in the same ways I kind of needed help.
Nice, nice. So I don't want to give the whole thing away because I do want for people to go and actually, purchase and read and implement these things for themselves. But can you share a habit in particular that has significantly impacted or contributed to your success as a leader? Like out of all of them, what was the one that was like, oh my gosh, this one is like game changer?
Yeah, the habits are an acronym, and so the B stands for befriend your brain. It's the B in the word habits. It's the third one because before you can really understand what it means and how to use it, you have to have done, I think, the other two things first. But it's probably one of the most important ones for people that can't do it or don't do it. They're not able to make progress really. And really, my argument is that there's a subconscious component to our brains. And my belief is that subconscious component does two things for us. It runs old programs that we've taught it. So it's kind of our autopilot functions are how it's there. And it wants to keep us safe. It tries to protect us. And while that's great, it's what causes us to stop at a red light without thinking about it or pull away from a hot stove. It sabotages us a lot because it's constantly pulling us back to places of comfort and what we've done before and things that feel easy to us. It doesn't want us to have to struggle or have pain. So it kind of lies to us a lot of the time whenever we're like, well, maybe I could do that. The subconscious is like, nah, you're good where you're at. Maybe you just kind of, nothing's wrong with it the way it is. It prevents us from maybe leaving not so great relationships or not going up for that promotion at work and maybe not speaking out in an academic classroom or a boardroom because of fear that someone may not like it or we might get punished for it. And so that one was when I understood that one, that I had this subconscious part of my brain kind of lying to me and that I could use my conscious brain to overcome it and talk to it and say, no, we're going to do it anyway. It's okay to have pain and struggle. That was really where everything began to shift. So that's probably out of the habits, my favorite habit.
Mhm. Well, and I've seen this a lot too. I think it's easy to get comfortable. It's easy if it's familiar. You don't have to really think about it. There's not a whole lot of exertion that goes into it. I also think that there's a little bit of learned helplessness that
Yes.
kind of holds us back, where we take a look around us and it's like, well, nothing's ever going to change. Kind of like the Eeyore, like why bother? But at the same time, while there are some things that are not within our control, and that sucks to a certain extent, I think we don't give ourselves enough credit and really realize that we have more in our control than we really realize. Is that kind of what this B in your habit was kind of gearing us toward, to recognize what we do have control over and what we can change?
It's you're very insightful because I can't count the number of times in the book I brought people back to that. Is that there's two circles. There's the circle of things you can't control, the weather, the past, other people's behavior to a large degree, and then there's lots and lots of things you can control. And our lives are made more successful and powerful by focusing on what we can control. Probably the best quote to describe it is life is 90%, I guess it's 10% what happens to you and 90% or more how you respond to it. We can't control what happens to us a lot of the time, but we can always control our response to it. That's probably one of the biggest themes in this book. And I know it's hard to practice, but it is what really makes the difference in us having power and greatness and feeling good about each day and what we bring to it. So it's so cool that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. And from a developmental standpoint, those neural channels that are ingrained in our brains, they've been there, many of them for so long
Yes.
that, I mean, you have to make the conscious effort that you're like, I'm not going to continue to think this way. Even if it's something that you practiced on for a decade, it can still be very easy for us to kind of lean back on that other, and you're like, no, that's not how I'm going to think anymore. We're going to think about this going forward. We're going to implement these things going forward. And so it's kind of you're kind of in that internal battle. So what you said about the subconscious kind of battling the conscious is definitely a real thing.
Yep. And what you're talking about, the muscle memory of this stuff being like in our DNA almost, or, many, many years and our generations before us, like our ancestors kind of had these tendencies as well. That's a huge deal. I have this acronym called EBAR. So experiences lead to beliefs, beliefs lead to actions, actions lead to results. And so whenever we're trying to change our beliefs or take new actions, we almost have to go and give ourselves new experiences, because we depend on those old experiences. They serve as like data and evidence. And so like the way we've done it before, or the way we've always done it for our lives, that really kind of haunts us, because we're very much trained to use that again and again. And so I see this with teams and professional environments. Sometimes you come to a team that's had some really lousy leadership, and people were punished for speaking out, and it wasn't a safe, secure environment, or things were very unfair. And people are kind of like in this protection mindset, like, I don't trust you right away. And yeah, I bet that's not going to happen. And you have to give them new experiences. You have to prove to them over and over again before they can let that kind of those past experiences go. Hey, we are going to do what we say. You won't be punished for telling the truth. I'm going to reward and recognize and acknowledge you. We're going to do things fairly and consistently. It takes some time. You can't just say it. And it's because of what you're talking about. That past and what we've seen and what we've used before really feels very strong to us. And it's hard to actually turn your back at it and say, we're going to do something different now. The body fights us on it. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And it's true for all of us.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you're a leader and you're going in, you're looking to make change immediately, you've already got people that are on heightened alert.
Yes.
And if you've not, how do I say this kindly? If you've not been the best leader that somebody has worked for in the past, and then you start making these different changes, there's that element of trust that people just simply don't have. And
Totally.
it's going to take time before they
Yeah.
actually buy in, like, oh, okay, Rachel really and truly has made a change. I can let my guard down a little bit because this really
Yep.
and truly is something that she's doing differently.
100%. Yep.
So we're not perfect, and I'm sure that you've had some bad habits of your own that you had to overcome. Can you tell us about one bad habit, or two or three bad habits that you
Yeah.
had, and how you overcame them, and what impact that had on your journey, just in general?
I've had countless bad habits. We've kind of been talking a little bit about leadership, so I guess I'll talk about some bad habits I had as a leader. Probably the biggest one is when I was young, I really wanted to get great results, and I also really wanted to work hard and prove that I was there to put the time in. I got way too involved in things that really my people should have been doing. I went so far to even make hiring decisions for people. We'd be down to a few candidates, and it would be someone a direct report of mine was hiring. And I would get way too deep into the conversation of recommending the person I thought was best, until eventually they just ended up doing that. I wasn't willing to let my team make mistakes, or fail, or do things at least that I thought would be a mistake or a failure, and then allow them to learn from it. I really wanted us to just be successful. And what I began to realize over time is that I was kind of robbing them of their journey. I wasn't allowing them to chart their own course, make their own self-discoveries, bumble through it the way I had. I wanted to save them from all of that. But the way we learn, we grow, and we evolve is to make mistakes and have stumbles and have things that we wish we had done differently, and regret. And then we say, I'm not going to let that happen again. And so I began to realize my job as a leader wasn't to give them all the answers, but it was to really ask the questions. And it wasn't to run the meetings, it was to facilitate meetings. And so I started engaging more in dialogues instead of monologues. If they said, hey, Amy, what do you think about this? How do you think, we should proceed? I would say, well, what do you think? What research have you done? Who have you talked to? What's kind of your sense on this? And then sometimes they would tell me, and I would say, you know what, that sounds great. Why don't we just try it, even if I had a different opinion? Because I began to realize what I was allowing them to do was have the safety to like air. And because they began to realize, okay, it's okay to do that, they began to innovate and take risks and try more. And so pulling back and getting out of the way, it's really hard to do as a leader. I think a lot of leaders feel like I got put here because I'm the best and they need me desperately, but they really don't. They need you to just create an environment of trust and security and safety for them to be their best selves, not for you to be your best self. And so you gain a lot by saying, I'm just going to let it happen. And I'm going to kind of watch from the sidelines as we play this game instead of I'm out there dribbling the ball with everyone. I probably made that mistake for years and then sort of bumbled or, discovered my way into a better way. And then as I pulled back, my teams came alive. And so, yeah, it was a much better way of operating.
And isn't it less stressful?
Yes,
Like,
it is.
like, I actually have like things that I can do from a transformational standpoint instead of
Yeah.
all this transactional stuff because shocker, I'm letting my team do their job.
That's right. You have to like let the perfectionist side of yourself go.
Yes.
If you are a perfectionist and you just won't allow for anything to be done perfectly the first time, it becomes more stressful. But if you say, hey, I expect us to make a couple of stumbles and mistakes, and we are going to learn from those, and that's going to be okay because it's for the sake of other people's growth, then it gets way less stressful. Like you said, you're just like, whatever happens, happens. And again, in general, people that are led that way, they do great things, assuming you have the right talent and you have put the right people in place, and they'll come back and delight you. And you start to build trust with them, like they've got it. It's going to be all right. Like I don't need to be involved in everything. Yeah, if you can get rid of the perfectionism, then much less stressful indeed, especially as they start to prove to you that they're capable and competent and they're ready.
Yeah, yeah. As a recovering perfectionist, I can I can attest to what you're saying. I still have moments where I have to really fight some of those urges. I mean, prime example, we've got invitations that are going out to an event that we're having, and the invitation was perfect, but then I didn't include the date. And they'd already been printed. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write the date on the invitation. It's fine. If you're going to be, Judge Judy about this handwritten date on the invitation, I don't want you coming anyways. So it's fine.
I love that. And you said earlier, we're human, right? And so we have
Right.
these things going on. Sometimes there's someone doing work at the house in the background of where we're doing our operations for the day. It's like that's normal. And so yeah, I think being able to let go a little and say, I'll just write it on there and then everyone will know. That's an amazing example of yeah, you saying I'm gonna get rid of the stress. I have other things that are more important. This isn't the biggest emphasis of my time today. I can handle it. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, it's
Yeah.
a
Because,
happier way to live.
10 years ago, there would have been a reprint, and then there would then been like, we're at a crunch for time, and I have to get these
Yes,
out, and I was like, I'm just not adding all of that to my life. I'm just
so
not
cool.
going to do it. So I know how to write. I'm just going to write it on the invitation.
I
It'll.
love it. Yeah, I
um,
would have been you several years ago as well. Reprint, then we've spent extra money. Now there's a crunch for time, and I really do believe that the reality is probably very few to no people are going to care about it. But in my head, I was like, oh, everyone's going to notice, and yeah, that led me into a place of a lot of overthinking and stress and
mhm,
overwhelm. And so
mhm.
yeah, it's really cool to make the transition like you've done.
And quite frankly, once the event is over, that invitation is going straight into the trash. So
Totally.
why am I going to stress over this?
Yep.
Like it's just not worth it. It's not
Love
worth
it.
it.
Agreed.
So what habits help you stay resilient in times of crisis or setbacks? Because when you're on this leadership journey, there are going to be things that are going to happen. You're going to have your unknowns, the expecteds. I mean, the biggest one in all of our most recent lives is probably COVID. But I mean, there are smaller ones too. All of a sudden a major client pulls out, or all of a sudden a major key player on your team decides to resign. What helps you stay resilient whenever things like that are going on?
That's a great question. And I can think of a few things, and all of them I used during COVID, but I've used them in the examples you just gave to, client actually, doesn't renew a contract and you don't get the bid for consulting work that you thought you were going to. We face these things all the time. And so yeah, I'll give you a few that come to mind. Probably the first one is gratitude. Gratitude in my mind is a major driver of happiness. And so I have a process where each morning at the start of the day and then each night before I go to bed, I just write down 2 or 3 specific things that I'm grateful for. They're usually things that happened in the previous day or that day. And so not just, oh, I'm grateful that I have shelter and a partner, but it's like, oh, I really loved that moment today where I went to Run Club and Cecilia and I were talking and she talked about this, like this memory of us. That was so sweet. And I loved that she remembered that and that made me feel good. And it's like moments. And I notice when we have gratitude for what's going well, we start to focus more on the positive, and then we don't focus or notice the negative as much. So it actually kind of serves as a process to rewire our brains. And this helps so that when, things that come up where we have to have resilience are in our lives, we don't see them as badly or as insurmountable as we didn't if we weren't putting gratitude in our life every day. When I'm having my gratitude journal and I haven't missed it in days, something bad will come up and I immediately can get to the place of like, okay, how can this help me? How can this make me stronger? Why is this not as big of a deal as I might think? So that's a big one. Another one is it's Viktor Frankl. He was imprisoned Nazi in a Nazi concentration camp many years ago. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning when he got out. He's been through a lot. He was tortured, but he actually kind of had this concept of in life there are stimuli, and after every stimuli there's a response. And in that space between stimulus and response is your ability to choose. And in that choice is all this power. And so he got very studied when he was a prisoner of war because the kind of wardens were noticing that he wasn't being as affected and as everyone else. And he was saying, hey, it's my ability to choose my response. And so we kind of talked about that a little. What he points out in all of his work is that the bigger the space is, the better of a choice you're able to make. And so anytime stress or something negative happens, I say, oh my gosh, here's my stimulus. Let me put a little space here. If it's someone cutting me off in traffic, it might just be a minute or not a minute, but maybe even 10 seconds for me to think about it before I shake my fist. It's about 10 seconds for me to realize, okay, maybe they're in a hurry. I don't know. But like, I'm still going to get to where I'm going. This is not a big deal. People aren't the best drivers instead of feeling anger. If it's a bigger event, like a piece of negative medical information, the space between stimulus and response might be a few days. Like, let me really sit with this and think about how I want to respond. But Viktor Frankl's, stimulus and response and that space in the middle, making it longer so we can get our conscious mind involved and make less of an emotional decision. It's amazing how effective it is. It's probably why people, if they're in a fight with their spouse, they're like, we just got to go for a walk, or we're done talking about this for tonight. We'll pick it back up tomorrow. Because in that space, again, your emotions subside. You can use logic and reason, and things never seem as bad. Probably a third one, it is running, but I would encourage people that aren't runners to just do some form of physical activity. It's amazing how much better we are mentally when we've been getting motion and activity physically. It clears my mind. It helps me feel less stressed out when I've had a chance to work out. So I like to cycle or rollerblade or run. Just somehow being out, if you can do it outside, I think that's even better. You notice all these other things going on, like a bird chirping, someone mowing a lawn, just kind of starts to like calm your system. There's sort of a rhythm to, the outside environment, and rhythm has been studied to be very helpful for our systems. And so getting exercise is an amazing tool. Again, if you combine that with the space between the stimulus and response, you're better when you go back after working out or having gotten some motion to think about your problems. And then maybe just another one to give you one more, turning to a trusted advisor. For me, it's my partner, David, most often now, but a close friend, somebody that maybe isn't negative or cynical or pessimistic in general, but somebody that you can count on to view struggles and challenges as learning opportunities, knowing who those people are and turning to them. When I was younger, I was brought up to be very competitive. It was about winning. And so I didn't always go to people for help. I had a really hard time asking for help. And so I kind of was isolated in that way. If I had a problem, it was like, I don't want to admit I'm having a problem. Kind of comes from that, I'm a recovering perfectionist like you. I didn't want to like say I'm struggling. And now I'm much more ready and able to say, hey, I have this issue. Can you meet up with me for dinner or a happy hour drink tonight? I really want to talk to you. And it feels so good to share struggles with people that you can count on to remind you, hey, you're strong. You're going to figure this out. You've got this. You've done that in the past before. Maybe this isn't so bad. What are some of the things you're planning to do about this? What are your options? Just talking it out with someone, it helps us not feel so alone. It helps validate us and normalize us. I think when we go through conflict completely isolated, things get worse. And so even during COVID, yeah, it was finding people that we could do Zoom meetings with, that we had never done before, like families and friends around the country, and feeling like, oh, we're kind of in this together. And so those are probably four things I do. There's many more, but I think it's a great question, because what you're pointing out by even asking the question is we have choices, and there are things we can do to make us more resilient. It's not just that we're helpless. We can do things to help us through those tough times, which is very true.
Well, and I'm a firm believer, and research really shows that this is particularly true with women, that imposter syndrome is always kind of lingering back there in the background. And there's actually a colleague of mine that is likely listening to this episode. And I won't share his name or anything, but he went through kind of a little bit of a period. He was a little self-conscious about, he was given this presentation with other people, and he didn't think he was qualified to be in the same room as these other individuals. And the whole time I'm listening to him, I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I know the things that he's accomplished. And
Ah,
so after he finished, he's like, so what do you recommend? And so I just reminded him of all of those things that he had already
I love it.
accomplished. And I'm like, and you're sitting here worried about one little presentation? Like, come on. He was like, okay, you're right. I guess I didn't think of it that way. And sometimes it can be hard. And I agree with you. We do need to have those individuals in our lives that can kind of clear away the fog and get rid of all of that just crud that is no longer relevant and not
Yeah.
necessary, to help us really and truly see with clarity what is going on and what we really and truly have the gifts and abilities to do going forward.
It's amazing what a real thing imposter syndrome is. You can't just tell someone like get over it or don't think that way. It
Right.
affects so many of us. It's kind of going back to the brain. It feels very real. And so I'm so sorry that he was experiencing that. So awesome that you were able to remind him of his accomplishments, or his achievements, or his past history, or examples of him being able to be successful. And I think we can remind ourselves of those things as well. Sometimes people say, why do you have all these running medals and running bibs and photos of like happy times up in your office? I mean, it's really decorated. It's, every, spot is covered. It is to remind me I can do hard things. I can handle struggle. I've done it in the past. We need to develop ways to overcome imposter syndrome. So I'm really happy that you were there for him to do that. It affects so many of us. It's a very
Yeah.
well-known thing now.
Yeah.
So cool.
Now, I know that there's probably some people that are listening right now and they're like, okay, you're throwing a lot of stuff out at us. And, it's professional information, it's personal information, but there are only 24 hours in a day. And oh yeah, I'm still supposed to sleep, and I'm supposed to exercise, and I'm supposed to, eat properly. Like, how do you balance these habits so that way you can be effective not only professionally, but then also personally as well?
Gosh, it's a great question. Again, time management is probably one of the biggest things people ask me about, and that my clients struggle with. And I always tell them time management is just self-management. And so the way that I manage my time, and there is a process and a system, and I've been using it for years, and it was one of those everything changed when I did it. So at the start of each week, I go through this process of figuring out what are the most important things I want to get done or need to get done this week, both personally and professionally. If everything's important, then nothing's important. And so I will separate out 3 things, 4 things over a 7-day week, that if, I don't get these things done, nothing else matters. And I figure out what they are, and then I give them an actual place. I'm old school, to live and breathe on my calendar. And so I still use Outlook, but I also have right here in front of me a paper calendar, and I write them into spots. And I have this belief that when we have a greater yes in mind, it's easier to say no. And saying no and setting boundaries with people is really important. And that's hard to do because, again, we fear that people are going to think something negative of us, like, oh my God, Amy doesn't want to help me, or Amy doesn't care about me. And so it's nice to be able to tell people why I have to say no. And so if I've already got something conflicting on my calendar with what someone's asking me to do, I can just use that. Hey, I've got, I made a commitment that I was going to write 3 or 4 hours in my book, and the only spot I really have to do that is Thursday afternoon. And so I've got to I've got to stay true to that. Otherwise, my book won't get done. And it's like one of the most important things I'm working on right now. Or, I really am not able to go out with you on Friday night and stay out late because I have this long run planned on Saturday morning and it's on my calendar and I'm training for a marathon. And so I have to do it. And so us being proactive is basically what this comes down to. It's not that we let the work week or other people's demands run us, but we're running the week. And the only way I have found to get in front of it is that, again, at the start of the week, say, I'm going to know what has to get done. I'm going to give those things spots to live. If absolutely something comes up and I like an emergency, I have to take my kid to the hospital, I'm going to pick it up from where it was on my calendar and I'm going to move it to somewhere else. And the times that a real emergency is going to happen where you have to pick something up is few and far between. A peer or a colleague saying, "Hey, do you have a minute? Can you meet with me tomorrow?" That in my mind is not an emergency. That's a situation where we might say, hey, I've got time next week. I can put you on my calendar next week, but this week's pretty booked with my most important things. As we start to live this way, people get used to it, and they expect us to have answers like that. And they also see that we're achieving all of our goals. We really do have time to kind of get it all done, but not without this planning process. But people start to respect it because they start to say, oh, the reason they are able to accomplish those marathons or write those books or still see your clients is because you do this. And if anything, now I'm kind of interested in how that all looks because I want to do it too. But they don't get really discouraged with us and push back on us because they start to notice there's congruence between our goals and our time. And so I just don't know how people are going to be able to have work-life balance and function if they don't do something like this, where they're basically saying, what do I want to get done? Final thought on this is at the start of the next week, I always look back at the previous week and say, was I successful? Like if I had 3 things professionally I really wanted to invest my time in, 3 things personally, did those get done? And if they didn't, what happened to me? Why? What did I let get into the way? Or was it a lack of motivation? And how could I have overcome that? So it's kind of like this review process and studying myself to help me learn to, hey, next week you're going to approach that differently. Until I was doing this, I constantly felt like I was pulled in all these different directions. If I was making time for work, like my workouts would get, blown off, or my friends would get blown off. I always felt like I had my arms out, every way and being pulled. And now I don't feel that way anymore because I do this every week. So hopefully that helps you or your listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having those hard deadlines with yourself, you keep those appointments with yourself, you keep those dates with yourself, because I know for me, if I set a goal to do something and then something else comes along, or I'm just kind of like, well, I'll do it tomorrow, then by the end of the week, I look back and I'm like, okay, well, I got all of these transactional things done, but the things that were the most important to me, it didn't happen.
Yes.
Our recording today is a prime example of that. I could have been like, well, I do have the dryer guy coming out, and it's not going to be the most, but you know what, it's important, so you make the time to get it done. And it may not be in its most perfect state, again, recovering perfectionist, but it's better to show up and to do your best at that moment than to completely neglect it. And then you've got that feeling of guilt of, well, maybe I could have done something a little bit different. And then you try to add it to the next week. And then before you know it, you've overbooked yourself, and then you
Yeah.
don't get anything done. And then you're on a downward negative spiral before you
Yeah.
know it.
I can relate to so much of you said. I guess our listeners or your listeners don't know this. I got on today and I was having a little bit of issue with my laptop. It didn't seem like it
Yeah.
was wanting to keep a charge. And you even said, do we need to reschedule? And the reason I was so quickly like, no, I really don't want to do that. Let me see if I can get it to work. Is I thought this is where it's living and breathing on the calendar. I try to avoid rescheduling at all costs. And now, of course, the power is working just fine.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it was very sweet of you and respectful to ask, hey, if it's not going to work, we're going to have to reschedule. But I had this visceral reaction to it because I thought I don't like to reschedule. I like to do exactly what I said I was going to do when I said I was going to do it. And that's
Right.
why I had
Right.
that reaction.
And I've already mentally prepared to do it at this particular time.
Yes,
And then I don't want to have to
absolutely.
put in that mental preparation, 2 weeks from now. I
Yep.
want to do it and address it and get it done so I can move forward.
Yep. I think so often we're so quick to blow things off that we said were important because something came up. And again, it's easier to say no to people and things when you have this greater yes in mind, but you have to have the greater yes in mind already there at the time of the ask. But so often friends or family come to me at the end of a week and they say, I just got nothing done. And like I was supposed to do whatever, but it didn't happen. And I'll always say, why? What went on? And typically it's like someone else made an unexpected request of them and they felt like they needed to say yes. And that's, I think, where our problems start to come is like either we didn't feel motivated or something else came up. And setting boundaries and saying no and having a plan and doing it consistently is a game changer for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and people do struggle with this a lot.
There are 2 months out of the year where I really try to emphasize, like as a reminder to myself, just having really firm boundaries, just because of the cycle of how my life typically runs. And so I have what I call no November, and then I have
uh,
April.
it's no November and then what in April?
April.
I love it. That's great. Oh, that's really incredible. It's
Yeah.
cool
So I
you've
mean, I
given
I
it a
still
name.
try to keep boundaries like throughout the other months out of the year, but those are like the 2 months where I really try to hyper focus in, because I mean, November, it's like right there before the holidays.
Yep.
And I already know that December is going to be a madhouse. And so I don't want to commit to anything that's just going to make it worse and I can't enjoy the season. And then with April, just again, because of the cycle of life that we're in, I know how hectic my May always is. And so I try to plan for that in April so that with
Yes.
May I can be a lot more present and available for that hectic
Amazing.
schedule that I know is coming. So,
I love that you've given it a term and there's language, no November and April. And the reason why is I think it sends the message to your brain that you're supposed to be saying no. And it's not
right.
a bad thing to say no. It's like we even have a name for this. We called it something. This was the
Right.
plan. We're just doing what we said we were going to do, which is turn people down. And so you don't fall into this trap of feeling guilty because you've already given it a terminology and it like it's a positive thing. It's like I'm meeting the plan and the expectations I already set for myself. That's brilliant.
Exactly.
Really
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah. So feel free to use that if anybody else needs it. I've been using it for the last couple of years, and it for me it's definitely been a game changer as far as
Cool.
having those boundaries in place and making sure that I can get things done the way that I know that they need to get done.
So good. That's really fun to hear your protocol and practices around it as well. A
Yeah.
lot of overlap.
Yeah, yeah,
Good
yeah.
stuff.
Well, we're kind of at that point where I like to call it the shameless plug.
Yep.
So if there's anything at all that you want to talk about, as long as it's legal, then that's totally fine. So I'll turn the floor over to you, and feel free to, if you've got any, speaking events coming up, anything that you'd
Oh,
like to share with the audience, feel free to do so.
my books are so important to me. So I guess I'll give people a 15% discount code for both of the books. I happen to have them right here. So here's what the first book looks like. It's 7 Virtues of Exceptional Leaders for anyone that's leading a team or a group, whether it's in a community or a professional environment. This book, I think, does have the answers of how you lead others. And so Virtues 15, just VIRTUES 15, gets people 15% off at my website. Here's the Habits book. This is the 6 Habits of Powerful People. A lot of what we talked about today, which is leading ourselves and just basically creating joy and happiness and managing stressful events. That's in this book. And so Habits, just H.A.B.I.T.S 15, gets people 15% off that book. And those are both at amymchambers.com. I guess the other thing I'll say is on my website, very easy to schedule time with me. I have a scheduling link right on there. I tend to meet with people once or twice about anything they want to talk about before I'd ever consider charging them. So if someone wants to just have a free discovery call or just hey, I like these ideas, I wanted to talk about them a little more, I'd be happy to do it. I love discussing these concepts with people. So if someone wants to block some time on my calendar, they can do that there at no charge. So those are a few things to share with folks.
Nice, very nice. Well, thank you so much for that information. I greatly appreciate it, and I definitely encourage anybody that is looking for some way to just shift your leadership and to really establish some basic principles, basic habits in your life that can make you more effective. That this is going to be a really great tool, really great resource.
Thank you, Rachel.
So Amy, thank you so much for taking time out to share your words of wisdom and your insight on just different pieces of information about leadership and life in general.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. It is so cool to meet people that are thinking about a lot of the same things and practicing them in their own life. And I can tell that you are. So, really great stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're listening, please know that all of Amy's social media information, I will put a link for all of that and also her website there in the show notes. So if you're not connected, feel free to reach out to her to connect, follow on social media, whatever. There's so much just garbage that's out on social media that having this positive influence from time to time can be a nice shift. I mean, we talked all about that chemical component, the brain component, and I don't even want to go there as far as the data on social media, but it's nice to have those positive things that kind of pop up in our feed. And if you did like what you heard, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. If this is your first episode, you came to the best. So make sure that you do subscribe to those things on primarily Spotify and YouTube, but it's also out there on Amazon and Google if you want to take a listen to those as well. And share this episode with people. You can always tag me, you can tag Amy. Leadership really and truly is a journey. We don't have to walk this alone. We're happy to come alongside that person and help you, help that individual. And so just feel free to share that content with them because you never know when somebody could hear, even if it's just a 5-minute blurb that just totally alters the course of their life. I truly believe in that power. And for those of you that are listening, remember you are made to be a leader right where you are, wherever you're leading. And the things that we talked about today can help you develop the roots of your leadership so you can weather any storm. Make sure you take care of yourself, take care of your team. You can 1000% do this. And until next time.